Okay, so Brittany is the operation manager at Hudson Valley Fisheries, a cutting-edge recirculating aquaculture systems farm specializing in growing high-quality steelhead trout for food markets. Since receiving her master's degree in aquaculture nutrition from Texas A&M, Brittany has worked to optimize the RAS environment for the betterment of fish health and welfare and product quality. She is passionate about advancing sustainable aquaculture systems, responsible environmental stewardship, and expanding the aquaculture industry in the U.S. And in her free time, uh, sits on the board of directors for the U.S. Trout Farmers Association. So
That's all
thanks a
I do
lot,
every
Brittany.
time.
Yeah, thanks a lot for doing this. We're looking forward to your presentation.
Yeah, thanks to Nick for the introduction. Thanks to the AFS Fish Health section for the opportunity. I'm honored to have been asked. And yeah, I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you today. Compared to some of the previous speakers that I was looking back on, I don't feel I have quite the varied and exciting maybe career path or background. But I hope my journey can maybe provide some encouragement and perspective from the aquaculture industry, as well as I'll share some life and career lessons that I've learned along the way. And yeah, just go ahead and save up those questions, and I'll try to see if I can answer them at the end there. See if this advances. Okay. So a little bit about my personal background. I was raised in central Pennsylvania, and the reason I say central Pennsylvania and not the actual town is because we were quite rural. So Big Valley, you see the picture on the top there is it's about 30 minutes south of Penn State University main campus. And so again, yeah, quite rural, a lot of Amish and Mennonite people there. And much of my family is Mennonite, and several of my grandparents actually left the Amish church when they were young. And of course, there's plenty of rivers, streams, creeks, or cricks, depending on who you ask. But I didn't grow up eating a lot of seafood. And occasionally we'd have tilapia from Aldi, and I didn't particularly care for it. No offense to my mom for cooking it. So a lot of small family farms in the area, primarily dairy farms. And because of that, growing up in that environment, my family weren't farmers, but I developed a great respect for farmers and the steadfastness that farmers have in their everyday life, the faithfulness that they have to their stock, to their farm, to the land. You know, we would schedule church events around when people would need to go back to their farm and milk their cows. And so again, it's just that like, well, this needs to be done, you know, so we plan our lives around it. Um, and I didn't realize how rural my community was until I learned, you know, when I went to college that other schools didn't have the first 2 days of deer season off. So again, pretty rural where I grew up. If you'd asked me when I was a kid what I wanted to be when I grew up, I probably would have said vet, but I think that was because I was under the delusion that vets just get to play with cute animals all day. And I think that's a fairly common mistake that children can make, but obviously that's not what I became. But I've always enjoyed biology as a subject. And so I went to Grove City College in Pennsylvania. It's about an hour north of Pittsburgh. And sort of, you know, I loved biology as a subject, so I chose that. But then, you know, where did I want to go after that? I was considering human, veterinary medicine, ecology, wildlife biology. I had a 4 day stint, and then I got really excited about dolphin training for the Navy. And then I did more research and I realized that they were actually paring back that program. And so I decided to not pursue that long term. Um, the summer after my sophomore year at Grove City, I had the opportunity to do some ant behavioral research with a professor there. And it was really fascinating. We were looking at the slave making behavior of the species Formica subintegra. And if you've ever looked into insects and insect behavior, it's one of those things that's really fascinating to look into in depth. It's just amazing, you know, how the world works, basically. But I sort of realized in the summer of doing that that it didn't really feel fulfilling to me as just, we were contributing to humanity's bank of common knowledge, right? But um, not really solving any problems, not really or we weren't contributing to any moving anything forward. At least that's how I felt. And so the lesson that I kind of learned at that point was that I want a career that solves a problem or moves humanity forward in a practical way. And so like practical research, that sort of thing. Um, After that, so I went into my junior year, and at that point, I had an aquatic ecology class, did a few field trips to local streams, and of course, you kick rocks and you find aquatic bugs and fun things like that. Before that time, I hadn't really considered fisheries, and I didn't really know what aquaculture was, to be honest. And so after that class, I started applying for fisheries and aquaculture related internships. And to be honest, I wasn't succeeding. It was pretty discouraging for a while. I finally got two interviews. One was for Alaska Fish and Game, which I really wanted. And the other one was the research experience for undergraduate at VIMS, working with oysters. And that was kind of a second choice. And no offense to Virginia, but Alaska was just more exciting. So I had the interview and I thought I bombed it. Um, Primarily because of one question. They asked me, have you handled a shotgun before? Have you shot a shotgun? And I said, yes. And they said, what kind? And I had shot a shotgun, but maybe once or twice. And so I panicked and oh, the double-barreled kind. And I thought, well, they think I don't know what I'm talking about. They probably just thought I lied to them. Um, so I'm not going to get that. So I had the interview with Dr. Stan Allen at VIMS, and the project did sound really interesting. Testing chemical induction of tetraploidy in oysters, and he told me, it presents the opportunity to publish a paper depending on what we would find. So after he offered the REU, I told Alaska Fish and Game that I had decided to take the other opportunity. And lo and behold, they said, well, that's too bad because we were going to offer you that internship. So a lesson learned here, don't make snap decisions off of uncertain assumptions, take time, ask for clarity. Um, so I was a little disappointed, but providentially it did turn out to be a great experience in Virginia. Learning about oyster aquaculture and doing the research was a great experience. And I was given a lot of responsibility for the actual culture of the oysters that I wasn't expecting to have, but I really enjoyed it. And so I was able to work with a small team to conduct the research that we did, and we did eventually publish the comparison of 6-dimethylmethylpurine and cytochalasin B to induce tetraploidy. Um, I'm working with Stan Allen. He said something to me. He said quite a few things to me that just kind of stuck in my head. One of them, though, it stung a little bit when he said it. Me being somewhat of a people pleaser at the time. Um, he said, I thought you would be more curious when I was there. And so, to me, I was sort of waiting to be told what to do. Didn't want to inconvenience anyone, didn't want to, yeah, just be in the way. And so I wouldn't necessarily ask questions because I didn't want to, bother people. But when he said that, it kind of, snapped something in my brain where it was like, if I have questions, I should ask questions. And so that was a big lesson that was learned there. And this experience really cemented my interest in aquaculture. It was new to me, a new segment of agriculture, which again I already respected and I did enjoy it. And this kind of came, my research with a purpose. We're producing food, we're feeding people. And so this was kind of became, my focus then. So despite my newfound, oh, just to point that out too, that's where the Kaufman Aquaculture Center is. Um, but yeah, so despite my newfound interest in aquaculture, I decided to take a step back for a year after I graduated undergraduate, and I did a gap year in Prague in the Czech Republic. It gave me some time to think through things and kind of clarify again, deciding and focusing on where I would want to move forward long term. So I was teaching English and also was able to work as a photojournalist for a Christian missions agency. And I was also able to travel a little bit around Europe as well, kind of documenting what they do. Um, One big life lesson I learned, and it's not necessarily just what I learned there, but um, something that really stands out is that it's important to be kind and patient with people, um, especially if they're trying to speak your language and they're not doing it very well. I was always very appreciative of people who were patient with me when I was trying to speak Czech and it wasn't necessarily going well or I was going really slow. So, yeah. So during that time, while I was in the Czech Republic, I was looking around at different programs for aquaculture applying, and I got connected with Dr. Gatlin at Texas A&M, and he was able to get me in on a fellowship. And so, of course, thank you to Dr. Gatlin for the support and the opportunity to work with him. So I was at the aquaculture research and teaching facility, got a lot of hands-on experience. Obviously fish nutrition research, fish handling, sampling, seining ponds. You can see from that picture there. So Fridays were catfish harvest day, and all the grad students would get into the pond and seine it up. And I did, maybe this is looking back with rose-colored glasses, but I did enjoy it in a way, having that physicality of actually doing the work along with the research. So it was the mix of the science and also being able to physically get out there and do it. Um, and one of the big lessons that I learned here was I was someone who wanted to seem like I knew what I was doing, right? Uh, and so, obviously I was there to learn, but it was difficult for me to accept help. Um, and so one of the big lessons that I learned here was accepting help is not weakness, right? Knowing when you need to ask for help is wise. And yeah, I had a lot of great people in the lab um, that helped me with that, obviously, but weren't necessarily harsh about it. Another big lesson I learned at A&M, and if you've ever worked with Dr. Gatlin, you know this too. Um, you will never work as hard or as fast as Dr. Gatlin. The man is a machine. So, yeah, I don't miss the heat, in Texas. I definitely miss the food and particularly the people. And so I want to give a shout out to the Aquaculture Nutrition Lab, because I know some of them are tuning in. Um, yeah, we still have a WhatsApp chat that lights up fairly frequently, and so um, yeah, we've most of us have moved on from Texas, but it was a really great experience to have all these great friends and mentors. To be honest, we had a great time together, but we also worked together, and yeah, that was really important. So coming up on the end of my time at Texas A&M, I did my thesis on the histidine requirement of juvenile red drum. Um, and after what was described to me as the shortest thesis I've ever seen, but that's not a bad thing, by Todd Sink, I had to get a job after graduation. And it seemed at the time like my job search was going about as well as my internship search had gone before. I posted my information on the WAS job board, um, and I got contacted by Hudson Valley Fisheries, Hudson Valley Fish Farms at the time. The name has kind of changed in the few years, but as an opportunity as an aquaculture technician, I really wanted something closer to Pennsylvania, somewhere not so hot. So upstate New York sounded pretty nice. I accepted the position at the time. I sort of, my mindset was that it would be a temporary position, day-to-day fish husbandry, system maintenance, but I'd be able to learn a lot about the industry and get some good hands-on experience. So what we're looking at right now is the beginning, or I guess I should say, the preview to Hudson Valley Fish Farms. Excuse me. This is what used to be called Local Ocean, which is the farm that was the farm before Hudson Valley Fish Farm. So this was owned by another company, and they were growing sea bass and sea bream primarily, some other species, but they had a lot of problems, and they ended up um, abandoning the facility and the fish and just kind of fleeing town. Um, so the Ing family bought the property um, and replaced everything except for the walls, basically. So new floors, new roof, um, new tanks, new piping, all of that. Uh, so the early years here, you can see the nursery taking shape, um, the pipe being laid under the ground. And this was all before I got here. So just to give you a background of the farm now. So getting the tanks installed and water tested. Yeah, so I joined the company in 2017 and I did work as an aquaculture technician, as I said. A lot of great hands-on experience. Um, since I joined the company fairly early on, I was able to contribute to doing sort of like research projects and developing practices and procedures, SOPs, things like that. So looking at things like purging process and flavor, trout skeletal formation, water quality, effects of biomass density, water volume, velocity rates. And then I ended up getting promoted to operations manager. And of course, I've learned a lot through that experience as well. Some things the hard way. So learning about, things that I didn't even expect to necessarily get information on, like engineering, electrical and plumbing, personnel management, water use reduction, different types of biofilters, wastewater treatment and discharge, certification schemes, marketing, sales, logistics, food safety, etc. And I'm not over all of those things all of the time, but yeah, definitely having a hand in all of those parts um of the company as we grew to what we're at right now. So right now, including incubation, we have 8 independent production systems at Hudson Valley Fisheries. We're producing around 500 metric tons annually, and if I hadn't said it before, we're a circulating aquaculture systems farm. So we're recirculating probably between 90 and 95% of the water. Um, the wastewater is treated on site in a wastewater treatment facility before discharge. Solid waste is captured, so fish feces, offal, mortalities, and culls are all composted. We raise from egg to plate, so we get eggs in from our suppliers, and then we raise them the entire way through and process them on site as well. And kind of what I see as the vision of Hudson Valley Fisheries is to do the best with the resources that are provided to us. So, how can we best steward the water that we have, incoming and discharge? How do we raise and harvest fish with respect for the animal? And so, again, on-site processing, we have the ability to do primary processing, so gutting. We do filleting, portioning. We have an IQF tunnel, so using nitrogen to freeze the product. We have a bespoke smoked line, which includes hot and cold smoked fish, which is a featured item on Singapore Airlines flights, which is pretty exciting. Um, yeah, so one of the most important things about any farm really is the people, in my opinion. So we have this lovely group of people, the technicians and the processing and management. I personally manage around a team of around 20. There's about 50 people total on site, including the processing and maintenance teams. So I have to say, of course, none of what we do here would be possible without this group of people. And so a huge thank you to them for their dedication and hard work. And something that another thing I learned from the aquaculture nutrition lab at Texas A&M was how important it was to create community, or to have community with the people that you work with. And so that's something that I try to do here is, we don't all have to be best friends That's not what I'm saying. But to have a sense of identity and community when we're at work together, we have each other's backs, and we work together to promote our common goal. So if you haven't had lunch already, I apologize if this makes you hungry. Um, One of the best parts, or maybe the best part of raising a delicious fish is eating it. And so some of the products we have here, the cold smoked, our fresh fish, the nice cooked portion there. Um, Personally, one of the most fulfilling things to do is to go to restaurants and have the fish prepared by the really talented chefs. And so these pictures are from a recent trip we took to a restaurant in Hudson Yards called Bond Street. So if you're in New York City, I would definitely recommend them. Yeah, really amazing place. And it's really fun for me. This would be one thing I do in my spare time is experiment with cooking the fish myself. So I have a little bit of I don't know if it's traditional, but I've made poke with our fish and it's good to my standards. In the middle there is some fire roasted steelhead and then some appetizers using our pastrami cold smoked, which is one of my favorite products. I have a new project as well, sort of a side project here. Um, called Happy Trout Pet Treats, and you should all follow it on Instagram. We actually just got approval to sell in New York State, and so you can go purchase these on Etsy as well. So using co-products is what I'll call them, and creating pet treats from those. Again, because we have the on-site processing plant, we're able to have uh, ownership or custody, I guess I should say, of the product from the entire way from obviously farm to processing plant to packaging to sales. And so I'm really hoping that the locally made, locally sourced origin of these pet treats will be a big selling point, as well as using items that aren't really used for products, such as hearts and livers, maybe some trim, things like that. But for now, we have some small fish that are the little trout that are being sold um, as that. Yep. A couple things that I've learned from RAS specifically, and this is a really short list, um, and it definitely doesn't cover everything. But some things that I've learned specifically about RAS aquaculture or from RAS aquaculture is that redundancy is extremely important. So essential equipment must have redundancy for failure. Um, it's important, in my experience, to think through and plan for the worst case scenarios. For instance, okay, we lose power. What happens when we lose power? Well, the generators come on. Well, what happens if the generators don't come on? Think through these scenarios and come up with a plan. It's better to at least have a plan, even if it doesn't work, than to not have any plan and be scrambling if something like that happens. Learning. So learn from your mistakes, learn from others' mistakes. Every time that a new technician is hired here, they go through a training program where we walk them through every single mistake that we've made here, um, that either resulted in fish mortality or equipment failure. And so we think it's important to make sure that we're not repeating those things over and over again. Curiosity, like I said before, ask yourself what can be improved. What's the most efficient way to get there? Um, yeah, I have a little plaque in my office that says it's better to ask a dumb question than to make a stupid mistake. And of course, that's, a little tongue in cheek. You can do either, and we're not going to get too mad unless you continue making the same stupid mistakes. And realism. So, in my opinion, it's important not to overpromise and underdeliver. I think that there is a necessary correction in the way that RAS aquaculture is being spoken about. Um, in that a lot of projects come out with these huge claims and then they just never get there. And so I think it's for the growth of RAS aquaculture and the continued investment, I think it's important to be more realistic with what can be achieved. Um, And for any RAS designers and engineers out there, I would say listen to operators. Learn from your mistakes, learn from their mistakes, learn from other projects' mistakes. Um, yeah, so we have institutional relationships with some of the, and this isn't everyone, but some of the institutions listed here. It's exciting to be able to make these connections and be able to work with people. So that's something I really find fulfilling as well, other than just eating the fish. And encouragement for people that might just be starting their careers and maybe they're introverted. Uh, Networking seems really, really difficult and really big, but the more that you practice it, the easier it gets. And yeah, just put yourself out there. I have to take a little bit of time to point out the U.S. Trout Farmers Association. So the annual meeting is September 16th through 18th this year, 2025, in Hunter, New York. So we are hosting it this year, and that means that there is a farm tour. So if you want to come out and see the farm, come to the conference and we can chat there as well. Shout out to Katie Harris for roping me into the board of directors. It is a great group anyway. I mean, the conference is going to be great as well. And so, yeah, I would just encourage you if you're able to come out to do that. So, some unsolicited career advice uh, for those that are just starting or are in the midst of their searching process, maybe. Um, do your research. And that's before you apply for jobs, as you're applying for jobs. I don't know how many people that have applied for positions here that I ask them, tell me about what we do here, and they can't tell me other than fish, and that's not good enough because it's so easy these days to Google something. And so if you're not interested enough to Google it, don't apply for that job. Um, Enthusiasm goes a long way. So being excited about the role or the company is going to help you in grabbing an opportunity as well. So find a role that means something to you. And harkening back sort of to my, I didn't want research just for research's sake. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. Of course, we need that information. And for some people, that's what really drives them. Um, but we've all heard the cliche, find something that you love and you'll never work a day in your life. And this sounds really nice, but in my opinion is absolutely untrue. Work is going to feel like work sometimes. It's going to be difficult. It's going to be demoralizing at times. You're going to get frustrated. There's going to be roadblocks. But if you have a role or a path that provides that inner motivation, um, you're going to be able to get through the tough times and keep moving forward. And then my last piece of career advice would be to get involved in things like trade organizations, groups. You're going to learn a lot. You're going to expand your network. Um, and yeah, I think that, the connection with people and being able to ask people for advice or for opinions is something that is really important. And I don't know if it's since COVID. I don't know if it's a new generation, and I don't want to put it all on Gen Z. Um, but it seems like people are getting more and more isolated. Um, but it is important to reach out and to connect with people that are in your field. Again, to grow your own career, but also to contribute to their knowledge, right? So it's not just that you need them, but they also need you. Um, Yeah, and I guess with that, I will say thank you. My email address is there. If you have any questions, please let me know. We're not hiring right now, so I'm sorry about that. But yeah, if anyone has any questions.
Thanks a lot, Brittany. Great presentation. Oh, covered a lot there. Perhaps some recipes in the chat would be really nice. Folks, if you've got any questions, feel free to unmute yourself or just drop them in the chat and we can go from there.
Hey, this question from Jeff Olbeeser. Brittany, can you tell us a little bit about your clients? all do you sell to and what kind of products?
No, I'm just kidding. Um, yeah, so we sell to a mix of people, some distributors, some restaurants, some direct to consumer. I would say the majority, I mean, volume wise, the majority goes to distributors. Um, yeah, we're able to, I guess I didn't mention that, I meant to, um, that we are certified to sell into Whole Foods and we are selling into Whole Foods right now. So that's our main grocery retailer. Um, in the Northeast only at the time at this time, but hopefully that can expand down the line.
I got one. Hey, Brittany, Matt Griffin here. Thank you so much for joining us. That was really great. I'm out of curiosity because I think some of this is supposed to be, like we said, professional development, some other things. What kind of coursework, I guess, would you suggest if students want to get involved or are looking to get into industry versus, say, academia or agency? Sometimes those are going to require different skill sets or different background or foundations. Do you have any suggestions as far as what kind of training people should be looking for that would give them maybe a leg up going into industry versus the more traditional academia route?
Sure. Yeah, I would say if you're looking to get into farming, um, anything hands-on is going to help. And I don't know if this would necessarily be useful for someone who was already in like university, but having trade, not like you don't have to be an electrician, but knowing a little bit about that sort of stuff, knowing a little bit about plumbing, knowing a little bit about electronics, um, would definitely help. And again, having hands-on fish rearing experience, fish husbandry really helps for applicants here.
Great, Brittany. You have a couple of questions in the chat here. Rod Getchell's curious about your water source. What is it?
Yeah, so we have municipal water as our primary source, a little bit of well water as well. But yeah, it's all groundwater.
Great. And another one here, they're curious, first the compliment on the presentation, and they're curious what the top challenges are in RAS that you would appreciate some automation and technology for automation.
Um, Good question. I know there are some companies that are already working on like AI. I think Real Data is one of them. Um, and they've kind of addressed some of the really important things as far as automation for fish feeding, um, in particular. Uh, I guess maybe like it's hard to say because I don't think that this would really apply to our farm, because our turbidity tends to be higher than most. But I know like early detection of uh, behavioral issues and things like that would be helpful. Particularly with feeding, I guess would be one big thing.
Great. This is a related question. Do you see any new technologies coming along, like something that might be on the horizon?
For RAS,
Yeah.
um, recently I haven't really noticed anything, but maybe I wasn't quite focused on that. Um, yeah, I mean, we're always looking into, of course, with the trade shows and the conferences, what people have advertised there. Um, and then, with my nutrition background too, kind of keeping an eye on different ingredients and things like that. So we're, excited to have algae oil and algae products in our feed right now. Um, Looking forward to insect products if that ever comes um to commercial scale. But yeah.
Okay, sticking on that last thought there, you got a question here and a compliment on the presentation. Um, let's see, what do you do for the fish food source to get that great color? Do you grow and produce your own fish food?
We don't produce our own feed. We use for the astaxanthin, which is the coloring for the fish, we use a product called Panaford. And so that's the natural source, not the synthetic astaxanthin. So they grow, I believe it's a yeast that produces astaxanthin. Well, it's astaxanthin and also a mix of other carotenoids. And then they distill it and dehydrate it and becomes a powder, and then they mix that into the feed.
Great. And then here's a question for you. What is the mean harvest weight and how long does it take to get your fish there on average?
Right now we're between like 2.3, 2.5 kilos, and that is around 15 months after first feeding.
Okay. And then do you utilize any monitoring and control devices for water quality, feeding, and water flow?
Yes. That's something I didn't really hit on, I guess, talking about the systems. We have a SCADA system, which stands for Supervisory Control and Data Acquisition. And so that's basically every system has its own brain that is reading probes on oxygen levels in the tanks, um, power for pumps, whether pumps are on, if flow is necessary, connected to flow rates and things like that. So we do have a lot of automation where that for that type of stuff.
Great. Out of curiosity, have you seen reductions in mortality or improvements in body condition because of that automation? Has it helped you manage the health of the fish better, or does it just make the job easier?
Yeah, it's more for like the job and the equipment. I mean, I guess oxygen levels, yes. But that's also more for, maintaining appropriate level, not necessarily increasing um welfare or anything.
Mhm.
Uh yeah, we've always kind of had that automation, so I guess I can't really speak to what it would be like without that. It's very important for emergency response, and I guess that's something I didn't really touch on either with RAS. Well, with the redundancy, yes, but also emergency response is a huge part of RAS aquaculture, and so having that automation that if an alarm goes off, everybody knows about it. So either if somebody is here, it's visual and it's also an auditory alarm. If there's not somebody on site in the farm, there's somebody on site that has the on-call phone, and they are tasked with coming in and, if not fixing, at least figuring out what the problem is and calling the people that can fix it.
Great. Here's a more fish health focused question. Can you talk about the sort of treatment strategies that you might use within the RAS if you encounter bacterial diseases in your facility?
Yeah, so we're mostly focused on prevention. Um, we don't use any antibiotics here, and ownership, doesn't want to. So basically, we're kind of limited there as far as if anything happens, basically culling the problem fish is our only resort. We do have the separation of systems, and so if something happens in one system, we're able to quarantine that system. But um, yeah, there's not really anything that we do as far as reactive medicine. I mean, we're basically just trying to prevent anything from getting in.
Great. Um, Try to summarize this question. So you had a lot of sort of career advice. There's a question here thinking about starting out in fish farming. If you could go back in time, like if as knowing what you know now,
Hmm.
what would you do differently maybe if you were starting a new farm or starting a position like the one you have?
Hmm. Um, I think that I would reach out to other farmers and sort of see their experience. Um, every RAS farm is different, and so maybe that's not necessarily what I'm saying. It's just as far as like the way that things are organized. Um, and being able to, because I was able to develop SOPs, but it also took me a long time, and there was some trial and error in there. And then of course I had my team's help as well. But yeah, I think talking to other farmers and seeing what problems they've encountered and then trying to learn from those.
Yeah, great. You talked about the importance of sort of biosecurity and preventing things from coming in. Do you vaccinate the fish though, just in case something does show up?
Yeah, we do vaccinate.
Okay. What can you share the types of vaccines that you use or what your vaccine approach is?
Um, I won't share the specifics, but it's a vaccine that our vet develops using the some of the bugs that they've found here. So,
Got it. Question about monitoring and mitigating any off flavor. Is that an issue at your facility and what do you do about it?
yeah, so it is an issue. I mean, in the growing systems, of course, because we're culturing biofilters, we're basically providing an experience or an environment, I guess you should say, for bacteria to grow, whether it's the beneficial ones or the ones that cause off flavor. So yeah, it is a problem for the biofilter, but we do have a purge system, but also a purging SOP and process that works. Um, our big thing with purging is having basically all the water that comes into our farm goes there first, and that is a flow through system. The purge system is not a recirculating system, and it goes through there and then is disinfected and then goes to the rest of the farm. So we're not losing any water, but we're also not reusing it in the purge. So again, having that kind of first source and then just making sure that that water remains clean and anytime that the tank is harvested, then going in and doing a really deep clean on all the surfaces um, in the purge system.
Great. You're still getting some compliments here in the chat on the job well done in the presentation and the questions here. A quick follow-up to an earlier one. What densities are you growing the fish at typically?
I'm probably not going to give the exact number
Yeah, that's
just
fine.
because it's recorded. um, but yeah, I mean, I guess I can say from what I've heard from other RAS farmers, we're on the lower end, but of course, compared to net pen farmers, we're higher
Yeah,
density wise.
great. If any other questions out there? All right, hearing none. Thanks again, Brittany, for the perspective on the career path and the position that you have now and pulling back the curtain a little bit on the production of your fish.
Sure.
Next time, we'll get into the recipes.
Sure.
Thanks a lot, everybody, for joining us today. This is the first week of many here over the summer, so I encourage you to come back next Thursday. We'll have an overview of the fish health section and a few talks from the folks at Mississippi State University. So until then, have a good one. Bye.
Thanks a lot, Brittany. Appreciate it.